Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to this interesting conversation that we're going to have about preparing for death. A lot of times we talk about death from a religious perspective or from a very medical perspective. We, or even like, just an overwhelming feeling perspective. But we don't really look beyond the tears and fears. And we're hoping that in today's session, we're going to explore some of that. Before I get into introductions for the speaker for today, just quickly, my name is Farhana Das Mohammed, and I'm the moderator for today. And I'd like to just invite Sajida Habib, who is the founder of Salam Foundation, who is hosting this particular session today, to say a few words of introduction. Sajida, go ahead.
Salam and good evening, everybody. My name is Sajida Habib. I'm the founder of Salam Foundation. Salam Foundation came into being during the COVID times when we had a lot of requests for single parents, seniors, and women's shelters. They needed help and we were there. We also helped the food bank. Recently, we helped all the newcomers that have come to Canada from war-torn countries. Our main mandate is for mental health, for children, for moms, for dads, for anyone in need. So Farhana had the idea of inviting Dr. Manji to this forum to talk about not death necessarily, but how to prepare for departing this world. Farhana, you can continue.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So as we said, we have Dr. Gulam Manji today. Dr. Manji is a physician scientist who focuses on research to identify new treatments for patients with gastrointestinal cancers. There's some big words here, so I'm just warning you. In particular, pancreas cancer. And he's the director of the Pancreas Medical Oncology at Columbia University, where he directs his laboratory and I would hate to have to say that word every day, and conducts investigator-initiated clinical trials. So he's received the Rising Star Award by the American Pancreas Association and is an R01, maybe you might have to explain that in a bit, is an R01 funded investigator and has numerous publications. He sees patients with gastrointestinal cancer and in particular pancreas cancer. So we're very, very happy to have you here today. I'm sure you see a lot of things and you have a lot of experience in depth, and looking forward to hearing from you.
All right. Thank you so much for inviting me. But before I start, I want to sort of preface this. Hopefully, I hope that this talk is not taken sort of negatively or things like that. I'm a physician who really wants to take care of patients and wants to move them away from the end, which we all have to face, or a new beginning, how some others may see. So one of the disclosures is that I'm Sajida Habib's younger brother. So if you have any grudges for her, please be kind to me. The other thing that I wanted to say is that I do not have any training in psychiatry, psychology, palliative care, and by no means I'm an expert on the subject. What I'm hoping to do is just have a conversation about what I have shared, and what I'd like to share is my experiences over the last 10 years. Because as many of you know, cancer is a serious diagnosis, and for the patients that I care for are usually are patients for whom there are no standard of care options available, and they're clinical trial patients, so a little bit tough patient population to treat. And unfortunately, those patient populations are where the outcomes may not be favorable. Given that there have been many tremendous advances in cancer care in general, we are getting patients truly cured. So again, I don't want a subconscious thought process that just because we're talking to death and I'm associated with cancer, that all hope is lost. Lastly, I will try to make my points really by sharing stories with you that I've had with patients, obviously keeping them confidential, because I think that is what makes me remember a point, and it's only by example. Lastly, what I would like to say is that many of you know me. By what I say doesn't by any means state that I know better, that I have faced the same issues that we'll discuss in the best of manner. So the goal is just to share with you what I've seen, what I've experienced, and how we could probably approach an issue differently. It's kind of interesting. Nobody teaches you how to be a parent. You sort of learn it along the way. You can read books, but really, I'm sure there are many people who sort of look to their partners and literally ask, like, what are we supposed to do? And the children are sort of looking at you like you know all the answers. Similarly, there'll come a day where we will all have to face death. And nobody tells us how we need to face this journey, how we're supposed to behave, and more particularly when a loved one is dying. And this is especially important when there is where this event happens with the first loved one, when you lose a parent, or if you're really unfortunate where you have to lose a sibling or a child, and it's your first event. How are you supposed to feel? How are you supposed to face this this very difficult experience? So I'm not saying I have answers, but I can tell you that I have, unfortunately, with my profession, experienced many situations, some of which were beautiful. And I met some amazing, incredible, beautiful people while they're going through this process. And unfortunately, there are some situations where people have struggled through this. The other thing that I also wanted to point out, that this is going to be my experiences and my discussion and my conversation is going to be not, it's not associated with any faith, any religion. So, there will be things that I'll state that will not potentially be consistent with the religious views. So please keep that into mind. I'm having a discussion in general that is really, not specific to any faith.
That's, it's really interesting that you brought up being a parent, because you're right. You have to go through the experience of parenthood to actually understand how to parent, or to have your own experience. And similarly, almost to death, is it's a very human experience of, everyone has to actually experience it to go through it. So it doesn't matter what your faith is. It doesn't matter what your background is, your culture is. As human beings, we all, at some point, we become parents, and then also inevitably we go through this journey. So that's great. Thank you so much for the prefacing. And I think that everyone understands that, that we're going to deal with this in a very sensitive way. It's absolutely not all doom and gloom. And at the end of the day, because there are so many variations in terms of experiences with this particular topic, that we're just giving one particular perspective. So thank you so much for that. So tell me, can you tell us a little bit more about your work? Like, what types of patients or what situations are you seeing?
So I'll tell you, my work involves seeing patients, as you mentioned. I'm research focused, And what keeps me alive and interested is trying to identify new ways of treating patients, finding new combination therapies or new targeted therapies, personalizing medicine, trying to see patients who have a difficult case and trying to approach it in a creative manner. I hope that will basically give them benefit. I don't see myself as somebody who's a physician who my goal is to make the patients better, and that's where it stops. I think that physicians in general, the role should be continuous.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you don't have anything to offer for a curative intent, or for their disease to improve, and there are no further options available, I don't think that your duty ends there. You need to be there until the end. And unfortunately, like I said, the patient population that I treat is heavily pre-treated, where the outcomes have not been that well, and then we're trying to treat them with clinical trials to try and sort of push the envelope and make them better.
So there's a lot of emotion, right, that your patients are going through when you see them.
Right. So, when I see patients, right, I treat pancreas cancer. So unfortunately, you can take the smartest person who's been very successful in life, and they get the diagnosis that, okay, you have pancreas cancer, they freeze. Everything becomes a fog, right? And then to traverse that whole process of trying to identify the right therapies, to get on therapies quickly, and then sort of to do a soul searching. These chemotherapies, have significant adverse events, toxicity burden, and then you start questioning: is this worth it? Am I spending the limited time that I have left appropriately? Should I be spending more time with my family and just say, I'm not going to do this? Or am I really deriving benefit, right? So, and that's sort of a continuum where it really depends on the personality of the patients that will tell you that there'll be some patients and who will say, I'm going to fight to the end. Doesn't matter what the quality is. I will face that burden of treatment as long as it gives me more time here. Some are more balanced, and usually I find patients who are more advanced in age will say, I'm going to fight this on my terms. When the treatment, the side effects of the treatment are not worth that additional potential benefit that we have, then that's when and then that's a conversation that you have continuously, and you can see it. It's almost where you see that the patients are going to they don't even have to bring it up. You as a physician are seeing the potential decline and the adverse events, and you sort of have to give them, you have to sort of indirectly bring up that conversation. And you have to be very careful, because many of the patients who are elderly who are going through this are really doing it for the loved ones. Okay. They're not doing it for themselves. Because imagine, that your spouse unfortunately has this diagnosis and says, you know what, I can't, the side effects are too tough. Indirectly, the spouse may think that she thinks I'm not worth bearing the side effects to potentially live long enough for me. So it's a very complex dynamics, and you have to sort of look at the patients and the caregivers. And there are times when you have to, as a physician, tell the patient, and the way that I approach this is by saying it out loud, where the patient's family is there, that it's okay to say enough, right? And it's only the patient who can say that, you know what, now the quality of life is such that this is not worth pursuing, right? So you have to really gauge each patient and individualize your treatment plan to really say that we have to keep going. Of course, if there's somebody who's young, you don't really have to have the discussion because they have so much to live. And you know, and you have to allow their loved ones. I mean, many of them, you know, I have patients who are, the youngest patient right now is 30 years old, has young kids, and I can identify with that, and we're rooting for this. So we will be creative and we'll be aggressive. So you have to sort of read that. And one other thing I want to say, which sort of backing up again, is over the last 10 years, I think looking at all of this has given me maybe a little bit of a different perspective, because I sort of see this day in and day out, is to say that what is our purpose in life? Again, this is not religious. Is life owed to you? Why were you chosen to come here and not somebody else? And just because you came into this life, does it mean that there was a guarantee that you will have lovely parents, a beautiful house, education, and all the different opportunities that we would want our kids to have? My view is not. I think if you came into this life, you should be happy that you were given this opportunity to come here. It's transient, no matter what faith you have.
Yep.
It's finite. You don't know when the episode will stop, right? The chapters will stop. There's no guarantee. The only thing you can do is write the chapter as you wish you want somebody else to read your book, right? So a patient who had, you know, gave me a very interesting perspective. And I do have these conversations with some of the patients where we know 2 years, for some of them 6 months, for some of them really 3 months.
Wow.
And they will tell me that, and one patient had a very interesting saying. He basically said, I've heard that when you're passing away, your life flashes through your eyes.
Past you, yeah.
As a book. I just want my book to be one that somebody would like to read.
Wow.
Right? So it gave me a very different view of how this patient is really looking at a very difficult time in his life, where he has every right to say, why me? He was about 50-some-year-old, had much to live for, had children, had a successful career, but said, I just want, when that time comes, that when my life flashes by, that it's a good movie to watch.
I love that. You know, I want to just I want to almost take a few moments to soak that in. That's going to stay in my head for a while. And just to translate that, like, to say it's not just with cancer patients, right? It's across humanity, basically. That's something we should all be thinking about. What kind of movie is our life? And is it something that people want to watch, will find of value? And hey, you know what? We're still here. So if we feel like there are some things we can do to make it a little better, we've got time. We got the opportunity to actually do things and move with it. And just something that you said earlier that I wanted to just tie in with this is what you said was, am I spending the limited time that I have appropriately? And I know you were speaking from the perspective of your patients, but I think the reality is that all of us technically have limited time. We don't really know. It's almost sometimes it's almost good to know you've got 6 months, because then you're like, all right, what can I do? What do I need to get, doing? Otherwise, we're like, we've got time. Don't really think about it. We try and hide from it. So it's good to have this perspective, I think, and all of us should have it. So that's a really interesting thing. I'm going to shift gears slightly. And I'm just also looking at the time to make sure that we are, did I say earlier that I'm a little obsessed about time? Oh, yeah. So for those, so you see a whole bunch of patients, right? There are some who are taking this really hard and probably really negative, and there are some who have a more positive experience. For those who are having a positive experience, is there anything that they're doing different?
Yeah, I think so. I think that you have to look at this with two different perspectives. You have the patient who's going through the journey, right? The person themselves, and then you have the loved ones who are going through the journey.
Yes.
So it depends on which perspective you're looking at. Now, again, I'm not going to be religious, or I'm not talking about any of those things. To me, each of them have a different role to play. The one who's going through the journey is the one who's anxious, who doesn't know what the unknown is, and is obviously probably concerned about the people who they are going to be leaving behind. I feel more concerned for the people who are going to be staying behind. Particularly, sometimes they're young patients, 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, right? I try to convince the patients, write them letters at certain ages. When are you going to graduate, right? You have to put yourself in that child's frame of mind as they're going to grow without their parent, always wondering, if mom was here, what would she have said? Right.
So you're almost telling, at some point, you're helping your patient to step out of their anxieties and fears and to look around and see, how do you set up an atmosphere in the moment, I think, and I'm sure you're going to give us some of the, suggestions for that in terms of how to make that situation more pleasant, and the last few memories really, really, impactful. But then there's also the planning of the future and that almost helps, right? Because if I can put myself into a situation where I was told that, hey, you only got 6 months left, of course I'm going to be worried about my children. Of course that's going to be the, and my parents and my family and all of that. So if you step out, rather than sitting there and worrying and crying and just fearing, you're almost giving them an action plan, which I love, because then now it takes you out of that circle that, that where you can't actually think, and it gives you something to plan for. And that's must be really helpful if people can actually get to that space.
Yeah, I mean, there are these really very nice organizations. One of them over here is Jack and Jill, in which patients who have very young children, they make their wish come true. So if they want to go to Disneyland, if they want to go to a cruise, the entire family will go. There will be family portraits. There will be the legacy videos. So again, in live video, whoever's passing away is sort of telling the child, what the expectations are, etc. So there comes a time, I think, that if where I know that the patient's going to go away, depending on who they're leaving behind, particularly if it's children, the focus shifts. The focus actually shifts away from the parent, in the sense that you have to also be concerned about the children, because the children now will have that memory of how their parent died for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
And that will have an impact on them psychologically, their success, their failures, their their challenges. So then you have to really make sure that that's a beautiful memory. A
Yeah.
very, very, of course, a painful memory, but you need to be mindful.
Bittersweet.
Bittersweet. And then what happens is that there's a whole dynamics that changes with the family. And I've seen families where they have realized that this is not about them. This is about the person who's taking this journey. And it's really all about how they want to make the journey.
Mm.
I've seen Muslims pass away. I've seen Orthodox Jewish pass away. I've seen, and you know what? They're all doing the same thing.
Yep.
Maybe reading a different book, maybe reading a different prayer, maybe facing a different direction, but doing the same thing. So, when you say that how the journey is, I think that there comes a time when you have to accept.
Yeah.
And in folks who accept, there is a peace that comes over.
Mm.
And the focus changes as far as now we are going to take this precious little time that we have and make it a really enjoyable memory, because that's going to stay for the rest of your life. And only you are the one who's going to pay the consequences if that memory is not a good one, because a departed one has departed.
So, this is like a best case scenario, right? Where you already have a good relationship with the members. What happens when it's not that, you maybe you're in a contentious situation and you're not getting along with your family members, or you haven't spoken to your family members for a while? Like, have you seen anything like that? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have. There are situations where, ex-wives, biological children, the new wife, and the children from the first marriage. And imagine the new wife not having any children.
Mm.
What's important now?
Oh, God.
Right? But that question is wrong. It's the person who's departing is important. They need to write their last chapter.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking you to help write their last chapter. They're not asking you to write it for them. And
Right. Can you repeat that again? That's so impactful.
No, it's you need to be gracious enough to allow the person who's leaving this place to leave the way they want to be.
Mm.
It's not about you. So when there are these contentious relationships and it's and you can see the pain in the person who's leaving.
Yeah.
Because they don't want, they love all of them.
Yes.
This person who's dying loves the second wife, probably loves the first wife, loves the children, and does not want anyone to be hurt, because at that time the emotions are so sensitive and so raw.
Yeah. Or it could be a parent with older kids, right? And the siblings are not getting along. The parent is, yeah.
Right. So like I said, nobody teaches you
How to pass away.
To pass away. Nobody teaches you that. You unfortunately make mistakes and then reflect and realize that, I've seen some people who are incredible the way that they have gone.
Can you think of someone who comes to mind and their story?
When people are suffering, they're in pain, they are passing away, in my opinion, before their time. I'm talking about 30, 34, but never getting upset.
Wow.
Taking care and asking about people who are caring for them, how they're doing. I had a patient who was getting chemotherapy, an amazing woman, early 50s, was a scientist, very strong, very successful. And things were not going well. She was on a clinical trial. Every step, the wrong result. And not because she wasn't trying. Concerned about my health. Concerned about whether I'm spending time with the kids on the weekend. She was an expert skier. While going through chemotherapy, was trying to figure out how she could teach my kids skiing lessons.
Wow.
Later on, I realized that there was an infusion nurse whose sister had lost her job, and she got her a job in her company. And this is all while going through chemotherapy, and really aggressive chemotherapy.
That's amazing.
But very graceful, kind. To me, that cannot be taught. Either that's in you, that is the core person. You see the core person when things are not going their way. They can be frustrated. They can blame people correctly or incorrectly. But the people who are graceful and are kind and are incredible human beings are ones where that personality doesn't change.
Wow. That's a call to action for all of us, that we need to start looking deep into ourselves and really working on how we can live a better life and be happier people, so that when things don't go our way, we can still have that core. Hopefully, I think maybe I'm a bit optimistic, but I'm hoping that that's something that people can start adjusting. Like if they start looking, and self-awareness is a big thing. I think that would probably help with shifting that dial. I'm gonna slightly change gears again. We are at 8:34, and I do want to have some time for if there's any questions. So if folks who are listening, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in chat. We'll pick them up. But I have a really important question, I think, is that what are some suggestions that you can offer to people who are listening, and myself, who may either be the one facing a critical illness or have a family member who's maybe being given not so long to live? Like, what are some things that they can do to prepare beyond fear and tears?
So I think that, for people who are facing illnesses which unfortunately may be terminal, is, I'm a physician, so I'm always going to try and ensure that for my patients that there is there's a true effort in trying to get the best treatment possible.
Mhm.
You don't want to be at a position where you're like, could have, should have, would have. Okay. I don't think that whichever power you believe in sort of says, okay, when that time comes, just sort of
Roll over
yeah,
and give up.
exactly.
Yeah.
Cash in your chips and sort of accept and move on. This is a beautiful life. There are many, many, many beautiful people who are doing incredible things that we don't see, or that's not reported, because it's not sold, right? You only, human nature is to be attracted to dramatic, negative things. No matter what you say, this is a beautiful life. Look at it such that nobody owes you anything. I hate to say this, but it's true. You're not special just because you're born. You're special because who you are and what you do. And I think that if you work in that perspective, and the other thing is, no, it doesn't mean, I shouldn't say this, but there is always somebody who has it worse off than you. Always. Okay?
Yeah.
Who I can tell you stories which are unbelievable. Like where you're like, this cannot be real. This cannot be this bad. How could this be this bad? It's just incredible. I have a patient who's about 34, works in cancer, and out of nowhere had stage 4 pancreas cancer. At initial diagnosis, came with his dad. And while I'm talking about his illness, his dad is not listening because he couldn't bear to listen. He couldn't even sit.
Yeah.
Right? Our 7th floor here has children.
Yeah.
I get on the elevator and I see a parent with their child. I know why they're here. So I'm not undermining anyone's difficulties, but there's always somebody who has it worse than you. And the other thing is, try to take and make the beautiful moments in life that you have. Okay? And try to avoid negativity. It's easier said than done. There's some people who will have a hold on you and will never give you the benefit of doubt. Be there for them. When they're ready, they'll accept you. But life is too short. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that whenever there's somebody who's, don't try to make amends.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, try to make amends, but go towards something positive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Regarding the loved ones who are going through that, help, but take the lead from the person who's going through this.
That's a really good point.
No matter, so for me, whenever I see patients and I tell them, I never say, I know what you're going through, because I don't. It's not until you are there in their shoes, facing what they're facing, with the responsibilities that you have. We don't know. So don't assume what the right thing to do is, because you may be doing the same exact thing if you were in the situation, because you don't see the whole picture. Your role, be there for them.
And what's right for you may not be right for them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is lessons for all of us.
And for family members, and and I've said this again and again and again. I know that many of you are from Toronto. You get a diagnosis, you get a second opinion. Okay, you get a diagnosis, you go to a cancer center, you go to a cardiac center that is of excellence.
Oh, sorry, this is like a recommendation that you're giving?
This is a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, it's sort of a healthcare. I'm telling you, if you're too scared that your physician will get upset that you're going for a second opinion, that's not the right physician for you.
Why do you suggest a second opinion?
Because the consequences are too grave. There are cutting edge technologies, medications in cardiology and in cancer, in surgery, that are pushing the envelope, and most of the time they'll be at the centers of excellence. And remember, center of excellence is not just one institution. Each institution will be an expert in one specific or multiple specific diseases. So
right.
You need to do that homework, and do not settle for convenience.
That's really good. I just to add to a couple of things that you had said earlier as suggestions. One of them is, if you know that you or a family member is coming to their last stages of their life, then consciously create great memories that you can live. Not only, I think, does it improve the person who's passing through this, it improves their kind of last few days, but you're leaving such a beautiful gift that's going to be something that whenever they're struggling, they'll be able to tap into that gift and just, I think that's such a wonderful suggestion. And I can't stop repeating it. I think personally, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're well, whether you're not, you don't know if you're going to be hit by a bus tomorrow. Start making those positive emotions and positive memories today and every day, and start just, really figuring out what's important in your lives. I think we forget when we get into this rat race of our lives, we forget what's really important. And I think that that's a really important big wake-up call for all of us. It doesn't matter whether you are perfectly healthy or completely not healthy.
I hope Sajida doesn't make a comment about what's important in life and the rat race.
Ouch.
No, because that's where I'll be guilty.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why.
That's why you have that really interesting expression on your face.
Right, because yeah, but a patient's husband just yesterday told me, he said, give me an example of the most, okay, I hope I'm not going to offend anyone. Give me an example of a most balanced person, and I'll tell you that is somebody who probably is the most boring person.
Oh.
So I'm going to take that and run with that. So
all right, that's opening up a whole new topic and a whole new conversation right there. We have a few things that are in the chat.
Sure.
But before we address those, you have any final thoughts that around how best we can prepare to die, or do you think that we've pretty much talked about all the important bits?
Like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you these stories where I don't think there is a best way to die. I don't know what is the best way to die, but I know that there are some things that we can do. And remember, you said that you're making memories for the person who's leaving away. I don't know, it's for them. this is for you. If your loved one is dying, you're making the memories for you, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, you were talking to Saju
Yeah.
and you were saying that you remember your grandfather passing away, right?
Well, it was not a memory, but it's something that has been told to me so many times.
Right, but if you had a loved one who's passing away,
Yes.
that memory, if you know, if and all of us can identify. Unfortunately, all of us probably have had an experience where we know someone very close to us who passed away. That memory, you will take it to your grave.
Yes.
That memory and your contribution towards that memory only affects you, nobody else. Only
Wow.
affects you. So, yes, you're giving a gift and being respectful. I think that that's the least you could do is respect how someone wants to die, regardless of how they want to do it. But your involvement in that memory is only for you. So I think we need to stop looking at what is owed to us, what we're doing for somebody else. You writing your own book, of life is for you.
Yeah. Very, very deep things to think about, honestly. I think I don't know if I speak for everyone here, but I think we're gonna have a lot of actual real deep thinking to do. So I'm just gonna quickly go into the questions that we have here. There's one question here which I don't know if you'd be comfortable or if it's a very long answer, but someone's asking, what are the first signs of pancreas cancer? Now, is that a very is it a short answer or a very long, convoluted answer?
Unfortunately, the reason that pancreas cancer is so difficult to treat is because the signs are very vague. Epigastric pain, back pain, and the median age of diagnosis is 67. So tell me, whoever's 67 who hasn't had back pain, right? So you can't sort of like every time you have back pain, you're like, oh my goodness, I have pancreas cancer, and start getting a CAT scan. Weight loss, unexplained weight loss should always be something that you should think about.
Trigger.
Jaundice. And
Jaundice, did you say?
Jaundice, yeah. All of a sudden you're jaundice, that's a warning sign. Pancreas cancer can present with jaundice. The one thing that I'll quickly say is that everybody should go through screening, colonoscopy, mammograms. I think that some of the communities, many of the communities, not just ours, shy away from screening. Colonoscopy, nothing to be shy of. Mammogram, nothing to be shy of. This is a silly. It's something that cures patients, makes you live longer, and you don't have to pay for it. It's paid for, right? I mean, especially for you guys. So not taking advantage of that just doesn't make sense. Remember, if in the family there are people who have pancreas cancer, God forbid, have breast cancer, pancreas cancer and breast cancer are related. You need to make sure that if there are a significant number of people who've had that diagnosis and are in the biological family, meaning that you are blood relatives, that you need to reach out to a cancer specialist of, whichever that patient is, and make sure that they're screened for mutations. There are, congenitally inheritable diseases, and pancreas cancer are there.
Okay.
So that's all I'll say.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And then just to piggyback on that and something you mentioned earlier, someone's asking, how do we validate a second opinion?
So depends. A second opinion is only worth where you get it. So if you're going to go from one local hospital and go 5 doors down and go to another local person, that's not of value, right? If you're going to sign a contract on a big business, you're going to do your homework, and you're not just going to go to your local lawyer and just sort of have him draft a contract. You're going to make sure it's tight. So And that's what you need to do. You need to go to, two experts in the field and give them your data and see what the opinions are. If the opinions are similar, then you get confidence you're on the right track. If they're not, then you need to interrogate and say, what are the rationales behind it? And then you may need to seek another third opinion. More work, but with surgeries, cancer, life-threatening illnesses, it would be silly not to do a second opinion.
Okay, perfect. And then one last question was, are we saying that negative emotions have an impact on our bodies? And I think there's a huge, again, a whole new topic there, but just if you have a brief.
Farhana,
yes,
that was me asking.
Yeah.
Because we're always talking about effect of emotions, and he's like, you're crazy half the time because,
okay.
No, I mean, it isn't, well, let's face it, negative emotions are frankly exhausting.
Yes.
Aren't they? So they're exhausting. But the thing is, only you have control over your thoughts. Right?
Agreed.
That's what I'm saying. You will not make everyone happy. Your decisions, your actions will not be perfect according to everyone. You put the best foot forward. Try to mitigate any misunderstandings to the best ability that you can. And then if you can't, be mature enough to say, you can't. And that's it. You're not abandoning that person. It's just that you've done everything in your power to mitigate, and then it's just taking you to a negative place. You just hope that one day circumstances will be such that they'll be mitigated.
Okay. Perfect. I have one last question here. Do you recommend beginning screening earlier from your experience of younger people who are being diagnosed with cancer? And then I think it's just following that, what age should mammograms begin?
Right, so this is actually controversial, so I'm not going to answer.
Oh.
The reason being is that the Canadian and American guidelines are different.
Different, okay, I see.
They are different. So what you need to do is reach out to your private, your PMD and general practitioner, and basically ask what are the guidelines. And remember, the key thing is to tell them your family history. The other thing that I would really urge people to do is share your medical history with your siblings, with your children, and with your cousin if possible, because guess what? Your siblings share half of your genes. The likelihood that you had something are the ones that, there is a likelihood. I'm not saying that everyone will have that disease, but they need to watch out for it, right? So many times I get family history and they're like, oh yeah. My aunt had something, but it was hush hush. We know it was cancer, but we don't know anything. Well, by doing that, you just compromised the potential screening that your family members could have done and potentially be cured.
It's such an important topic that, having a terminal illness should not be something to be ashamed of, or it should not be a taboo. I think that is such a fundamental underlying thing we need to still work on. I'm surprised.
Yeah, I mean, breast cancer screening, colonoscopies. I mean, there's nothing private, in my opinion, about it. It's nothing to be tabooed. It's life. We're all susceptible to it, and we're only doing ourselves a service by not screening and taking and putting ourselves and our family members at risk.
Okay. Well, we did go a little bit over time, so I appreciate you graciously giving us your time. And thank you so much for the audience who has been sitting and listening, and for all the questions that came through. Someone mentioned, was saying, thank you so much for this. And I totally echo that. We really appreciate hearing from you, your expertise, your knowledge, and, being brave enough to talk about a topic that many people don't actually want to talk about. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Sajida, if you have any last words.
No, thank you, Abbas, for taking time off. I know you're still possibly at your office. And Farhana, thank you for suggesting this and for, mediating this whole conversation.
I think it's a really important topic. I don't think anyone should stop talking about this topic. Just listening to this or being part of this conversation doesn't mean that it's over. Keep talking, talk to your family members, talk to your friends, your loved ones. I think that we should all become much more proactive about how we want our if I feel like life and death are on the opposite sides of the same coin. So if you are putting in effort in your life and you're preparing for a wonderful life, I think we should also be preparing for a wonderful death. As crazy as that might sound.
What was really interesting to me is when Abbas said that, and I'd never thought of that like when somebody is passing, when you're making memories, it's not for them, it's for me who's left behind.
Yep.
And honestly, I never thought of that. And honestly, yes, being gracious and not making it about me, but about them. I think that's a huge thing that I need to learn.
I think all of us in different ways. Absolutely. So thank you once again. Just a reminder that we have recorded the session today. And once the recording is up, it's going to be live on Salam Foundation, the website. So do look out for it. And I'm sure that Sajida will be sharing the link. And Dr. Manji, thank you so much once again. It was, I think I'm not done listening to you, so maybe we can look at another session. Maybe not necessarily right away. You're probably going to stop, answering my messages. But at some point, I'm sure that we would continue to love to hear from you. Maybe even from a perspective of I saw a lot of interest about pancreas or pancreas cancer or cancer in general. That might be a topic that people might really be interested in hearing. So. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll catch up soon again in another session.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.